Okay. I think there's some people in the room. Holy cow. Lots of people. Very excited to see everyone. I'm really excited to see Elise, who we're going to get to in just a second. But we have some late breaking news and some shout outs that I have to give to people. First of all, Elise Nelson, Amy McGowan, Brett Saunders, Brian Conrad, Chad Angelo, winemaker Chad Angelo, Hans and Caitlin Greasy, Ivy is in the house. Also, Linda Forsyth, Jim Brubaker, Melissa Flores, who I'm guessing is a big fan of Elkhorn Peak, Mark Shallenor, Lori Pot. Now I'm going to massacre your name, Lori. So call me afterwards and give me the pronunciation and origin so we can do this again. That would be good. I want to first shout out, does in fact go to Chad Angelo because I'm wearing Chad Angelo's swag that he sent me. And so rather than standing up, I'll show you emblemed golf shirts for both Mission Control and myself, because we are not above wearing swag from wineries. I think the first person to send it out was Kim Vance. So Kim Vance at Zoetic sent it. The great crew at Crux sent out some shirts. And I wear them more often than on SIP. Trust me. Always be selling, as we say in the Cellar Angels household. Second shout out, in fact, does go to Kim Vance because Kim Vance received an award from Facebook today. She is a #1 fan of Cellar Angels, according to Facebook, and has that badge. I'm not certain if that's a good or a bad thing, but congratulations to Kim. And last shout out, 2 of them in a row, to the folks that were actually knocking it out of the park with a speed response to the email blast this week. Jim Brubaker, who actually correctly and quickly got the answer to which winery started in Napa Valley in 1866. That is, of course, the Miliavaca Wine Company. And then on today's email blast, Doug Rutherford asking and answering, what is the item on the Pét Nat bottle that lets you know the vintage without looking at the year? And it's that young lady right there from the Jetsons with a mask. Very cool. I'm loving it. This is SIP 67, and we like to start every episode with a famous Chicago Bear, number 67. So in the chat, feel free for all the Midwesterners, not Packer fans, please, just Midwesterner Bear fans. I'm going to go with Jerry Fontenot, and that's enough football because that's really all I know about football these days, except that the preseason started last night. I think I saw in a casino in Vegas. That's the voice. So I apologize for that. But let's get to the woman of the hour. The topic that we're going to be exploring tonight is Pét Nat. And we have with us from Elkhorn Peak, our old, not old as in chronological age, but our longtime friend and fan, Elise Nerlove from Elkhorn Peak. Elise, how are you?
Hi, Martin. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Yeah, we're old friends, I'd say. It's been a few years.
Correct. It has been a few years. Well, we are thrilled, and most people know you as a fantastic Pinot Noir producer, and you've got a long history of producing Pinot Noir. Tonight, we are going to be talking about Pét Nat, and I would like to learn a little bit about the journey on how Elise said, you know what, let's make a sparkling.
Yeah, absolutely. So I brought a bottle myself tonight. Did you open yours yet?
I did, and fun fact, obviously you can open it with this type of opener. Don't need a corkscrew. Everyone has one of these handy. Maybe it's in your glove box and in the car. Just me on that one? Okay, that's awkward. But yeah, I like the cap. So let's talk about the sparkling program, right? The big sparkling program, and how on earth you decided to make the Pét Nat.
Absolutely. So this is our second vintage of sparkling wine under the Elkhorn Peak label, and first vintage to use Pinot Noir grapes, which, you know, Pinot Noir grapes are near and dear to my heart. So I was super excited to work with Pinot Noir in the 2020 year to make a sparkling wine. And, you know, I worked at Gloria Ferrer for several years before coming home to the family business, and really fell in love with sparkling wine while I was there. And when I left Gloria Ferrer and started working for the family business, getting more involved in winemaking, I just thought, I'm gonna try and make a sparkling wine. So first vintage was made in my garage with grapes that I could just get my hands on. It was the 2019 year. It happened to be a I'm sorry, 2018 is when I made my first garage Pét Nat. It was a blockbuster year here in Napa, just so much fruit, people didn't know what to do with it. So it was pretty easy to get my hands on some leftover fruit. Made my first sparkling wine in my garage. People loved it. They told me that I should make a commercial Pét Nat for the Elkhorn Peak label. And so that's kind of where I got started.
Well, and I love the Gloria Ferrar background, but when you say people loved it, don't sell yourself short. The vintage sold out. It sold out in about 30 days and it was gone. The wine we're drinking this evening, there's only 60 cases made, and it is an absolute fun, delicious wine. And so I understand that kind of the matriculation of working at Gloria Ferrar and doing bubbles and wanting to do it here. But why not a traditional method Champenois versus the Pét Nat?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the traditional method, it takes about 3 years to make a sparkling wine. You have to make the base wine and then come in with science and art and make the dosage and restart fermentation. And it's quite an advanced process. And I had read a lot about Pét Nats. I go to these natural winemaking tastings all around just to see what people are doing. And Pét Nat just kept popping up. So I talked to a few people who make Pét Nat, who make sparkling wine, and they let me know that it's just a couple month process. It's a good sparkling wine method to dip your toe in to see if you have the chops to make sparkling wine. And so I like that short turnaround time.
So essentially, since it's a couple months, I mean, we could probably get some extra grapes down here in Florida and do it in our garage as well and see what happens. Would that
you totally should go for it. Yeah.
Totally go for it.
I encourage it. You know, I wasn't a winemaker till a few years ago myself.
That will be interesting. Well, you actually just talked a little bit about kind of background on Pét Nat. So I'm going to launch the first poll question for this evening. And I also want to say hello to Julie Hirschberg.
Julie. Julie's a good friend.
And bear with me. I said hello to Brian, Dan Verna, other good friend. As long as no one did what they did, and Melissa Flores.
Yep. Hi, Melissa. Happy to have you on tonight.
All right. So for all the newcomers, it's an honor system. Everyone has to ante up $15 for each poll question. We keep track of it and we carry it forward throughout the year. But I'm going to let you know the first poll question. Pét Nat's origin dates back to the 1700s and was created as a faster, less expensive, and easier alternative to champagne. True or false? And for the new folks, we always like to start with maybe a softball question before we get into the essay questions and the take-home exam. And I can tell you right now, Elise, this is absolutely delicious.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'm going to give this about 10 more seconds, and everyone knows that really means 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Yeah, no Googling, people. I can see that. So here's the answers. Pretty split, 60-40. And do you actually know the correct historical answer, Elise?
I think it dates back further than the 1700s.
It does. It dates back to the 1500s, but that's not even the part of the question that is historically inaccurate. It's interesting story because bubbles obviously seemingly always go back to Benedictine monks, and this is the exact same thing. So this Benedictine monk had wine stored, and when the temperature dropped, the fermentation process stopped in the bottle because it was too cold. But then in the spring, when the temperatures warmed up, the fermentation process began again. And he started looking at his wines. He's like, why do these wines have bubbles in them? And that was back in the 1500s. So like any good monk, you make lemonade out of lemons, and Pét Nat was born. So 60% of the couple or 60% of the crowd incorrect, but you still have a chance of redemption.
You know what? That's what I love so much about Pét Nat is that spontaneity. Every bottle is its own fermentation vessel when it comes to Pét Nat. So you really do the best you can before it gets in bottle. And then you sort of just have to trust the process. And we do the same thing the Benedictine monks do. We use the weather to kickstart fermentation again in the springtime.
Well, walk us through that. So, and by the way, happy anniversary, because everybody that's drinking the Pét Nat this evening, these grapes were harvested 1 year ago today.
That's right.
We actually spoke with Elise last year and said, you're harvesting tonight. Could we do an episode in a year from now? She said, sure. So that just shows you the vision that Elise has. But yeah, 1 year ago, it's amazing that these were being harvested and now they're in the bottle and now we're enjoying it. But
yep,
it is not at all like method champenois. So when you talk about the fermentation process in the bottle, go into some detail on that so folks understand a little bit more about what you're talking about.
Yeah, I love making Pét Nat. There's like a saying in the industry around harvest time that if you're working with grapes, you're working in production, then you're a grape slave for the next like 3 months or so. And that couldn't be more true with Pét Nat in particular, because you really have to watch Pét Nat. You bottle it while it's actively fermenting, and then it sort of goes dormant and then wakes back up again in the spring.
How do you do that? How
you have to
actively fermenting. Isn't it just bubbling like a cauldron or something?
It's not bubbling that intensely, but it's certainly active. Yes,
okay,
very much so. So you have to work quick. I mean, we aim to pick the grapes at about 20 bricks for champagne, for Pét Nat, and you have to make sure they get in the bottle at 2 bricks. If you bottle them at higher than 2 bricks, you risk having too much pressure inside the bottle and big problems. And if you bottle too low, you risk not having any bubbles at all.
Okay, so 2 less than desirable outcomes.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's probably a 60-day process where you're just living on the knife edge.
It's less than that. It's about 2 weeks. So you pick the grapes, you bring them to the winery. I personally foot tread.
Hey, you can't say that. That's another poll question later on.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So we're going to take a small commercial break and come back and see if we can edit that part out. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. But anyways, yeah, it would just watch the juice, take your bricks and temp every single day, watch it slowly, cool it down if it's moving too fast. And then you have to be ready to pull the trigger when it gets to 2 bricks. You have to have all your bottling materials ready. And so, yeah, I'm sort of at the whim of my Pét Nat for about 2 weeks from harvest to bottle. And then I put her to bed for a couple months and wake her back up in the springtime.
That is incredible. I like it. And since we kind of went there on the second poll question, for those of you that got it wrong, let's see if there's a chance at redemption right here. Poll question number 2. See who's anybody is paying attention. This wine was crushed in an unusual method of pigeage or pressing. What was the pressing method used by Elkhorn Peak? Rubber paddles or batons from long abandoned pinball machines? The Lucille Ball method of foot treading, antique bladder press that Ken found half buried on the property, and by the way, that could actually be a very real outcome.
It could.
Simple gravity from the weight of the clusters and then cold soaked. I wonder why it's not showing up as far as the wording. So we will get to the bricks explanation in a second, because there's a question in the chat, at least to talk a little bit about bricks, because we're not talking BRICKS. 5, 4, 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 1. Okay,
nice.
Who actually, show of hands, one person who put rubber battles or batons from long abandoned pinballs. Reveal yourself in the chat. Brave person. And
I actually think that that's the best method by which to crush grapes, and I'm going to immediately talk to my father about that when this is done with. I love that idea.
That would be good. The actual foot treading is in fact the correct answer. So why foot treading?
Why foot treading? I mean, it allows you to control how much extraction you're getting out of those grapes because you're actually in there with them. I mean, it's the simplest answer. Yeah, Yeah, it gives you a lot of control. And as a winemaker, you know, the number one thing important is to do it right the first time with grapes, right? You don't get a second chance. So if you over extract them, you're SOL. So if you're in there foot treading with them, you can really make the call and when the color is just right.
Okay. And so how many people are doing that? Just you?
Me? Yeah. So we make about, you mentioned a small lot. This is 60 cases of Pét Nat. That's approximately 1 ton of fruit. And we pick our fruit in half-ton macro bins. So there's just 2 half-ton macro bins in the winery and me and a hose nearby.
So you just have like some earbuds in, just jamming out and just walking around in the macro bins?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Okay. And then and it's perfect because then you have immediate feedback on the process and the extraction. How many people, when you are bottling during the active fermentation to make certain that everything goes well, how many people are involved in that process?
Probably, I don't know, 4 or 5. I'm at the winery, so I'll have one person at the tank, making sure that the tank's not pulling air or anything like that. And then I'm usually on the bottling line, filling bottles, and we have one person behind the capper, capping the bottles, and then someone stacking them on a pallet. So it's very much like an assembly line. Just get that juice from tank to bottle and out the door.
Is there a hierarchy of seniority? Like is getting to the capper stage, is that big versus the lower ending things?
That's a good question. I think the worst job on the line is whoever's cleaning. So I usually try and pick up that task because, you know, I'm so appreciative of everyone's help. I'll do the dirty job, but.
Nice. And okay, so let's go back and talk about bricks.
Yes.
So it's a measurement of sugar
inside the berry.
Okay, so it's a measurement of sugar inside the berry, and the number equates to what, milliliters per gram, or what is it? What's the science?
Oh boy, I'm actually not really sure. So bricks is measured in degrees, okay. But it's a measure of sugar, and I just sort of know the equivalent. So you know when your berries hit veraison, which is when the grapes grow from green to purple and they stop growing and start maturing. They're usually around, I don't know, 14, 15 bricks when they start ripening. And usually for still wine, we pick at about 25 bricks. But for sparkling wine, you want more high acid. You want that more crisp, fresh, maybe a little bit underripe character. So you try and pick I usually pick between 19 and 20 bricks for my sparkling program.
And then how noticeable is like a 19 to 20? Is that jump? Is it a big amount of sweetness that you can notice, or do you really not notice it until it's 19 to 23? I mean, what is the order of magnitude there?
I think you definitely can notice a difference in one brick. Okay. There's other factors too, right? If your pH levels or acid levels are a certain way, everything you want to be balanced, and you hope that everything balances at the same time and you can pick and everything's where in its optimal ranges. But yeah, there's a big difference in 1 degree of brick. I mean, we take samples of all of our vineyard blocks separately, and we have 7 vineyard blocks. So you taste each block, and one block might be at 18 bricks and one block might be at 19 bricks. And there's a big taste difference. I mean, it's the difference of having something slightly underripe and something less underripe, right? Or when they get to higher bricks, 25, 26, then you start tasting things that are like overripe, like a little bit of raisining, right? Or fig or something like that.
And then, so are you just using your mouth to taste these, or do you have a device that measures this?
Well, I subscribe to the old farming techniques that my dad taught me. I have the tools, right? I have a refractometer that measures bricks in degrees. And I always check my measurements twice, but I also taste everything because sometimes 19 bricks can taste different if the pH isn't, at an optimal range either. So I think the taste test is just as important as the measurements, but I definitely measure twice, measure twice, cut once, right?
I like it. And it's funny, growing up in the Midwest, I mean, the only analogy that I can draw would be, and George O'Mara, good evening to you. Nice to see you.
Hi,
The only
George.
analogy I can think of, at least with where you talk about ripeness in berries varying per vine, is apple orchards, to where you can, or corn, because I grew up in the Midwest, so we know corn. But you could actually, in an apple orchard, look at a tree, and some of the berries or apples on a tree are perfect. Some are not so perfect. Some are overripe. Is it similar with clusters and particularly vines in areas of the vineyard?
Absolutely. And there can be variations in the maturity of a grape cluster on a single vine. You can have most clusters that are ripe and a couple of clusters that are underripe. So what we're doing now in the vineyard is taking berry samples. So I mentioned we take them by block, but I literally walk every other row every 2 days and pick a big bag of berries. I try and get a nice, even selection, a composite sample of the vineyard, mash them all up, and then you measure the bricks in that juice. So, you have to make a call. It would be pretty cool to have the ability to go out and just pick the most ripe clusters, right? To make the best wine, but there's some economics in it too, right? We gotta pick everything that's out there, and we gotta bring crews out to help us. So it'd be kind of a nightmare if we had to go out every other day or so just to make sure every cluster was at optimum ripeness. But what comes out is it's good. It's a great expression of our site. And if you call it right, you really can make the balance between, knowing when your vineyard is at optimal ripeness all around.
Well, and then why bottle cap versus cork?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So Pét Nats are under about half the pressure that a traditional champagne is under. So you can see when you're tasting it, it's more akin to like drinking a mineral water than it is drinking like a Taittinger champagne or anything like that. So the bottle cap is enough to keep it sealed. Whereas with champagne, there's so much pressure inside the bottle that they do the cork and the crown cap just to make sure it's secure.
Right. And then let's go back. We talked a little bit about where it began in the 1500s, but talk a little bit about, it's actually not called Pét Nat. That's the abbreviated name. Yeah,
that's right. So it comes from the French term, and I am so bad in French, you guys, so please forgive my pronunciations, but it's pétillant naturel. So it's means little bubbles or little naturally occurring bubbles. That's the literal translation. But, wine has enough hard to pronounce varietals out there. So being that this is sort of a hipster wine, we simply gave it the nickname Pét Nat. Keep it simple, keep it easy for the people.
Well, and it's interesting too, because when you start looking at some of the history of it, yes, it goes back to the 1500s, but then there was essentially 500 years of very little commercial exposure to it. And then in Alsace recently, they started doing it again by accident. There was a couple producers that had the wine got too cold, then it got warm again, and the fermentation process started. And so people started tasting it and loving it, kind of like what they're doing here in the States. And so there's almost a little bit of a renaissance of it. And it's a fantastic, you said hipster, fun wine. I also think it would be very cool that when you go to parties and you are bringing a sparkling wine with a cap, people are going to be asking you, what on earth is that? Where did you find it? And they're going to love it. So I think it's just a fun wine, and it certainly doesn't break the bank.
Yeah, exactly. It's casual. It's something that, they drink on the beaches in France, right? Who doesn't want to bring that into a party?
Seriously. I'm all about that. Very, very nice. I am going to maybe show a little Google Earth, unless there's a question. Chad Angelo, simple process, less costly, very good fruit. Absolutely.
Right. And that is the most important thing, Chad. All great wines start with grapefruit. So if you're working with grapefruit and you can guide it in an unusual direction, it'll turn out pretty good. You just got to keep it on the right path.
So let me show everyone where Elise is. I hope. All right, good.
All right.
For those of you, and by the way, Jeff and Jane Greasy, if I did not say hello to you, hello. Thank you for joining. This is, as I said earlier, sip 67. Jeff and Jane Greasy have been on 66 of them. So
Wow.
they have the longest streak ever. They have won a significant amount of money, so much that they actually have to declare it in the poll questions. So little known fact, the IRS has called us. But let's talk about wine regions. So this is where Cellar Angels focuses. For 11 years now, we have only worked with producers in Napa and Sonoma. And for us, it's the most geographically rich landscape in the world to produce wine. It is a Mediterranean climate rather, and there's only 3% of the world that has this climate. From a geological standpoint, it's unbelievable. You have the maritime influences that we talk about with the Pacific. Interesting too, San Pablo Bay, average temperature in San Pablo Bay year round is about 52 to 58 degrees. Today's temperature in the San Pablo Bay, for extra credit, Elise, do you want to take a shot?
I don't know. Let me know.
66 degrees. So I don't know if it's global warming or what, but that's 10 degrees warmer than the normal temperature of the San Pablo Bay. But this is a very, very cold body of water, which influences the region significantly, especially the southern region in the Coombsville, AVA, and area. And this is where Pinot Noir and Chardonnay love to hang out. They like the cool weather. Elkhorn Peak is actually influenced by the San Pablo Bay.
That's right.
And how so?
Well, we are located, you can see the San Pablo Bay and the San Francisco Bay from our barn. Actually, my virtual background here is of our barn. So Elkhorn Peak Cellars sits at 400 feet elevation in Jameson Canyon. So we're not very high, but we're above the frost line, which is helpful when you're growing grapes. And we have a shot of the San Pablo Bay and San Francisco Bay. You can see it from our 400 foot elevation. Yep, just like that. And we get some nice foggy mornings from the San Pablo Bay, San Francisco Bay. And then in the afternoon, we get that gentle breeze. So perfect for a delicate grape like Pinot Noir.
No, that's very cool. And I did not realize, I mean, I did because I've driven it a bunch of times and stopped by and stuff. But this picture is actually kind of interesting because you do get to see how close you are to the water.
That's right.
And that leads to some very, very chilly mornings.
It does. But it's nice when you're working outside. Nothing you want more than a nice, cool breeze.
That's a good point. I can vouch for that. And so I also wanted to show folks another vineyard because this is something special that is new to the portfolio. And it was funny because when Elise and I were prepping yesterday, I said, what do I call you? Because you're the winemaker here, you are the assistant winemaker there, you chief bottle washer, tour guide, you know, you're the Jane of all trades. But the Cabernet program, if I'm not mistaken, is that all you?
No, I'm doing a lot with my dad, actually. So we have our ranch, which you're looking at now. And then we also had a 9-acre parcel about a mile away. And it was a Pinot Noir vineyard for a long time. And it was time to replant that vineyard. And my dad just kind of came out one day and he said, I want to grow cab in the vineyard down the street. And I was just like, I don't know about that. You know, we're good at Pinot. Let's just stay what we're, good at doing. And he's just like, nope, I want to grow cab. So here's the cab vineyard. It went in under Dad's direction, but I was out there planting these vines. There's, I believe, 11,000 individual vines on this 9-acre parcel. And it's about 90% Cabernet Sauvignon and then 1 acre of Cabernet Franc. And it was planted over a 2-year period. And that was about 4 years ago that we started. And so we are getting our first harvest off of this Cabernet vineyard this year. And I've been working on logistics and I'm quite nervous. Having worked with Pinot Noir my whole life, I mean, I have roommates that work at wineries and they're like, cab's a piece of cake. You can really beat the hell out of it. And it's just like, it's the comeback kid. But I don't know, I'm pretty nervous. Cab is king in Napa. You really can't mess it up. There's some great Cabernet out there. So I'm just hoping that we can produce something that you can call, a Napa Cab, a beautiful Napa Cab.
And what are you thinking from a production standpoint you're going to have?
You mean like in tons this year?
In tons, and since we promise everybody no math, convert that for us to cases.
Okay, I got to do the math. I think we'll have probably about 10 tons of Cabernet this year. Oh gosh, I got to do the math. I don't know that off the top of my head. Okay, well, I actually don't know how many cases because Cabernet clusters are a lot larger than Pinot Noir clusters. So if you get 10 tens, is it juicier? Is it going to produce more juice? I don't know. Let me do.
You could have a lot of Cab on your hands. How many tons of Pinot did you say you got? 1 ton?
I'm doing 1 ton for sparkling wine. That made about 60 cases. But you have to remember, this is also, the Pét Nat grapes are picked slightly underripe. So they're going to have less juice. They haven't had time to really soften.
Right. Well, I mean, you could, simple math, hopefully it's not 600 cases of Cab because it's bigger berries. You're doing 10 times as much. Denise, actually, Mission Control is asking Chad Angelo, who is a renowned and fantastic Cab producer.
Nice.
So he will likely know and oh, by the way, he happens to be a rocket scientist from Boeing. So if anybody can do math, it's Chad. And by the way, Boeing is not a paid sponsor, so all letters should go back to them. So it is at the bottom of the hour, a couple minutes after. So those of you that want to say hello to Elise visually, we're going to turn all the cameras on, and we've got a manageable enough crowd that we can control this, and it's not going to be Hollywood Squares run amok. Hollywood Squares at least used to be a program in the 70s and 80s that we're familiar with here at Cellar Angels because we're old. But we're going to go ahead and turn on the cameras, and hopefully we can figure out. Chad says 1 ton will get about 2.4 barrels of wine. So you're going to have 24 or so barrels. And what is there? There's 50 cases in a barrel.
I just did some math too, based on what we get out of the Pinot Noir, and my math came out at 27 barrels. So that sounds about right, Chad. And then there's 25 cases to a barrel approximately. So 25, let's just say times 25, that's 625. You're getting pretty close, Martin. You said 600.
My 8th grade math teacher would be proud. There's Jeff and Jane sitting outside matching colors. I love it. Who set the memo? Hi, Julie. For teal? Julie, thank you so much for joining. George O'Mara, I like your backdrop.
Thank you.
Hey, George.
Hey, Elise. Wow. This is really cool. This is like amazing.
There you go.
It's like I feel like it's Howard Cosell and the ABC football right night here tonight. So Martin, you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's easy when I have the talent of Elise. I just try to get out of the way.
That's very sweet.
Scotland Kiefer in the house from Chicago. Doug Rutherford up in Minnesota. Chad Angelo in Colorado. Jeff and Jane in a suburb of Barrington, Illinois. Huge Bear fans, the Greases, and not at all. Big Packer fans. All right, so let's talk about. We're talking a little bit about the Cabernet program, and Dad kind of said, "I want to grow Cab," and you're right. I mean, Cab is king, Chardonnay is queen in the Valley, so. We're getting right around 600 some odd cases. So we've got a few wine lovers here. They're going to be buying some. I don't think we can take it all. There's currently 9 of us. That would be a lot. Scotland would do 2 bottles a night because it is actually his namesake. So
Julie might do a few hundred cases. Julie.
There you go, Julie. I like it. Good. So we should get all this accounted for very, very quickly. Do you have I know you're afraid of Cabernet because it's a big decision, and normally when
nervous.
Nervous. And Pinot Noir is actually harvested 6-8 weeks earlier than Cab for the most part.
That's right. So being a Pinot Noir producer all this time, usually by the end of September, that's it for the year. Dad hits the road, goes to Tahoe for a couple weeks vacation. But no, now that we're in the Cabernet realm, we got to strap in for the long haul. You harvest Cabernet around October. So.
Right. So all vacations are off this year is what you're saying.
That's right. We'll see you at Christmas.
And you're beginning the Cabernet harvest this Sunday?
No, we're picking for 2021 Pét Nat this Sunday evening.
Okay, so you've been incredibly prolific introducing people to Elkhorn Peak via social media and walking through the vineyard, and I love it. Both you and your dad. Little vignettes are very educational, very fun, and you'll be doing that when you start picking this Sunday?
Yeah, I hope so. Absolutely. Yeah, we like sharing what we're doing. We're grape growers first and foremost. We don't have a social media person or a marketing team or anything like that. I have my cell phone in my pocket and I'm out there doing most of the work with my dad. So I just whip my cell phone out. Everything's pretty homegrown. But I'm definitely a better shot than my dad. You hand him the camera and you'll have a thumb over half the video, right?
I'm very familiar with that photographic technique. Alyssa, nice to see you. And now, Lori, that you're on camera, please help me with the pronunciation of your last name.
It's Potomi.
Okay, I'm 0 for 3 on that then. Potomi. I would have got that on the 4th try or so. Nationality?
I think Greek, but I'm not entirely sure.
Interesting. That
Ptolemaeus?
You think it's Greek.
Cleopatra?
Nice.
I like Cleopatra. That works.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you. And the Pét Nat is great. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you, Lori. Yeah. Thank you.
Look at everyone drinking Pét Nat. I love it.
Hey, Elise, one of the things you talked about earlier was the effervescence of your Pét Nat, which I truly enjoy because it's not overpowering. It allows the bubbles. It's like minks running down your throat. It's like just so smooth. It just kind of runs down there. And then that aftertaste.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
George, you're an artist. I love that description. Thank you. Well, yeah, that aftertaste is something I'm really proud of. I think that comes directly from the color, right? The foot treading, the extraction of the flavors and colors. It's pretty intense in this wine by intention. So it leaves that, brilliant aftertaste.
I'm thinking back of the bottle tasting notes by George O'Mara next year.
I think that's a great idea. You're hired, George.
Yeah, but let's face facts. Wine is meant to be drunk with food, right? And the ability to pair some incredible. Think of having some grilled asparagus with a little Bernays on top and your Pét Nat. That would be spectacular, right? The fat from the Bernays, you got the greenness of the asparagus, and boom, everything explodes. It'd be amazing.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because asparagus is traditionally one of the hardest items to pair with wine.
Yes.
Very, very challenging. I like Chad Angelo said oysters, and I completely agree. He also had a question, Elise. You said there's an acre or so of, not an acre, you said a portion of Cab Franc. Are you planning on blending that in?
There is 1 acre of Cabernet Franc, and I am convinced to hold that back on its own so we can release a very limited edition Cabernet Franc. We make 1 ton of sparkling wine a year, and I'd love to make 1 ton of Cabernet Franc in the future as well.
Wow, that would be amazing and exciting as all heck, because Cab Franc is, in our opinion at Cellar Angels, it's not represented well in the valley except for a half dozen to a dozen producers. It's a challenging grape. It oftentimes seems to be harvested at inappropriate times, leading to a really vegetal, green, herbaceous component that is less than appealing, in my opinion. So if you can produce a Cab Franc, it's a stellar wine that just will knock your socks off, and from a quality to price ratio can be fantastic, like all your wines. So I'm excited about that one.
Thanks. And here's another fun fact from the grower's perspective of Cabernet Franc. Cabernet Franc shows virus or disease in the vineyard before any other varietal. So from a grape grower's perspective, one who's a perfectionist like my dad, he hates the Cabernet Franc block because, it shows virus first. And, lots of vineyards have viruses. It doesn't affect the fruit or anything like that. But if you're looking for that quintessential green foliage, cascading over the top or anything, Cabernet Franc's not your grape.
Yeah, it's the bellwether crop when something's going wrong.
Yeah, that's right. But also very useful to have in a vineyard, right? Lets you catch problems before maybe any other grape varietal would show any diseases. So
yeah. But here's a comment. You make a great Cab Franc, you're going to sell it out in a week, guaranteed.
Wow.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Can I hold you to that, George?
Yes. I mean, for
Actually,
the people
I would
who
hold George to.
if you understand
that, because on day 6, if there's some left, just call George.
Yeah,
and say,
exactly.
you said this would be sold out in a week. But
That's
I
right.
agree with him. I think it would be fantastic. Elise, walk us through kind of the Elkhorn Peak story. Your dad goes back quite a ways with regards to farming this land and being one of the first pioneers to plant Pinot. Bring us up to speed and kind of like the Elkhorn Peak story from origin to now.
Okay. My dad's an amazing guy. He bought this old sheep ranch in 1983 in Napa. The land was basically barren. It had a few structures like this barn right behind me that was filled to the brim with hay, and an old farmhouse and a horse stable. And that was pretty much it. He came to this land with the plan to flip it, make a little bit of money. But he says that after a couple months on the ranch, just kind of cleaning it up, he said, this ranch is for living. And he never left. So at the, in the early 80s, this was in 1983, people were putting grapes in the ground in Napa. And my dad thought he'd follow suit. So he drove around to the neighbors in Carneros, asked them what they were planting, took a couple of viticulture courses at the local junior college, and came up here and planted the first 2 acres with his own 2 hands. And they did really well, and he expanded to a couple more acres, and the rest is sort of history. But he's 100% self-taught, which is so impressive. And everything he put in at the beginning was literally with like a shovel in his own 2 hands. He actually tells the story. He's a very mechanical man by nature. There was an old tractor on the ranch, just an old burned out tractor that actually originally ran on kerosene, if you can believe it. It was an old crawler, and he managed to fix it, and that's what he tilled the land with for the first few years. He brought this old tractor back to life, and so we've always kind of been scrappy in the way we got things together. But fast forward 40 years, we have this beautiful ranch tucked away in the little hillside in Napa. My parents still live up there today. I was born and raised on the ranch and work there every day. And it's just a dream to go up to the ranch every day and work side by side with my dad.
That is awesome. What did he do before he purchased the land?
He worked doing commercial bank loans in Walnut Creek, which is, I don't know, just about 40 minutes from here. So he just kind of,
that doesn't strike me as appealing.
It wasn't like a passion. I think he kind of just, somehow worked his way into it, but he didn't last too long, came back home, came back to the ranch, married my mom, and then made a deal with my mom that, he'd make sure the kids got where they needed to be if he could farm some grapes. And they tried it for a couple years, and yeah.
Well, we are all lucky recipients of his efforts, and both of your efforts. And for those of you, Elise and I talked about it at the beginning. We've been a fan of hers and Ken's for a while. You may not know a lot about Cellar Angels. We are, and I'll show you the website. We're 100% direct to consumer. So we feature and focus wines, as I said, when we looked at Google Earth, only from Napa and Sonoma. 90 or 95% of the time, you can't get these wines outside of California because 60 cases of Pét Nat is not going to get distributed. There's no distributor that's going to pick that up. So you're not going to buy it in Texas or Chicago or Florida or anything like that. So direct to consumer is what we do. And we do it because we are recovering bricks and mortar wine store owners. So we used to own a bricks and mortar wine store, and we got fed up with not having access to some of the small, great producers in Napa and Sonoma. So we said, we need to solve this problem because I'm tired of buying the same wine that everybody else is buying at all the wine stores, all the restaurants. Let's go out and start a business. And that was in 2010. So only Napa and Sonoma, 100% direct to consumer. There are 3 wine clubs, and we're getting ready to announce our Q3 wine club. The producer changes every single quarter, but it's simple to just go to the website, go to shop, go to wines, and we can actually just go to sparkling wines, and there'll be 2 on there, I think, if memory serves me correct. Yep, Napa and Sonoma being represented. But here's the Elkhorn Peak, and you have the regular retail price, and then you have the Cellar Angels price. It's the preferred price. You have to log in to create that. But tasting notes, text sheet that we produce for you, angel bonus offer when George buys all the remaining cases of the Cabernet. There'll be a lot of perks associated with that acquisition. But it's just a fun way. We want to try to bring the Valley to you. And at the same time, and Elise, I want you to talk about this, every single transaction benefits a charity. And it's something that is very near and dear to Cellar Angels, hence the actual name Angels, because we want to help folks that may not have the opportunities that we all have. And interestingly enough, Elise approached us a while back with regards to, would you guys consider supporting Save the Family Farms? And I don't know if you are familiar with Save the Family Farms, but it is an amazing organization, of which, Elise, I'm going to have you talk about in a second. But when you go out to the Valley, and we just completed trip 61 there a couple of weeks ago, you go out to the Valley and you realize that not a lot of these folks have tasting rooms. Not a lot of them can entertain groups on their property because of the ordinances that have been written in a way to favor the bigger producers. And Elise is trying to legally leverage the playing field, and we are trying to assist them in that process. And so, Elise, I won't steal your thunder, but talk to us a little bit about Save the Family Farms.
You hit the nail on the head, Martin. Thank you. As Martin mentioned, a lot of these small family producers like myself, I mean, there's a lot of us out here in Napa. Our wine doesn't make it outside of Napa ever. We aren't distributed anywhere outside of our own backyard. In fact, Cellar Angels is the only distributor or wine shop, virtual wine shop that we're available on outside of California. And so the way all of us get business, get new customers, is by meeting them one-on-one. And we need the ability to invite these people up to our vineyard sites. I mean, that is the dream. Invite guests up to our vineyard site, walk them through the vineyard, show them what we're doing out here in our little corner of Napa, and teach them a little bit about grape growing and just drink some wine casually. And, you know, my family's business, it was enough to sustain the family I grew up in. But now that I'm working as a partner in the business and I have to sustain my own family too, the business needs to grow. And so we need to be able to host guests on site. And right now, Napa County regulations are just cost prohibitive to have that permit on your site. So about 3 years ago, my father and I joined a local nonprofit called Save the Family Farms. And our mission is to keep small family farms viable for future generations in Napa. And we are working to create something called a micro winery ordinance that would allow small family farms a reasonable path to obtain the permits needed to invite guests onto their property. And so actually, George O'Mara is the president of the nonprofit, and he's been responsible for getting us where we are today. I've been working with George for about 3 years. He's a great mentor. He's actually also he makes his own wine as well. And he's just been really helpful in this process. So if you want to purchase wine from Cellar Angels and select Save the Family Farms as your charity, we would be eternally grateful. All donations that come in are used to further the cause. We are working with land specialists and attorneys and engineers, and just to get a process set up for small family farmers so they know how to get through this process and can open up for public.
Well, and it's interesting because you physically cannot check out of the Cellar Angels website without selecting a charity, and portions of proceeds go to the charity you select. So it's fantastic from that standpoint because it's self-guided. It is a challenge because, I mean, we have some very heart-tugging, worthwhile charities. You know, Folds of Honor, helping military families. The Tyler Robinson Foundation is our newest charity that helps families paying for medical costs of children with cancer. And so there are a lot of things that are near and dear to all of us. So I think in a roundabout sort of way, you need to get as many people buying as much wine as possible is what I'm saying. But Save the Family Farms, at least in my opinion, was very polite and very elegant. The system is rigged against the small producer. I'll try to be as blunt as possible. And it is unfair that these producers, and by the way, 90 to 95% of the producers in Napa, of which there's, last I checked, 1,008 commercially licensed wineries, 95% of them or so produce under 10,000 cases. So they're not going to have a lot of distribution. The way they get traffic is to get people out to taste. So now there's creative ways to do this. There's, I think, vineyard tours. There are ranch soil assessment investigations. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Come check out the siding on our antique barn for 2 hours. There's a lot of creative ways, but the bottom line is we need to get these ordinances rewritten in a manner that actually gets more people to the small producers. And that's what Cellar Angels has been trying to do, is introduce the small producers for 11 years to a larger audience. And so hopefully, and by the way, you guys have been great as far as customers of Cellar Angels, because Elise sends us an email every now and then, says, you guys are paying for our legal fees. The customers are doing amazing. And so thank you. We just need to get the tent bigger. So whatever we can do to do that. It's a good question. Doug Rutherford is asking, why do county officials care so much about this issue?
Let me try and answer that one. Having met with these county officials now for over the last 3 years, it is clear that they want to maintain a luxury brand inside of Napa. It's called Go Big or Go Home. The regulations, the $120 tastings, the lunches, dinners, the hotel rooms, it's all they're trying to sustain something that has been unrealistic, in my opinion, because how many people pay $1,000 a night for a hotel room, pay $200 per tasting, and want to buy $100 bottles of wine?
Jeff and Jane Greasy.
Okay, yeah. Well, of course they got unlimited money, but I want to. By the way, Martin, I want to put a plug in for Cellar Angels. Think about this: if you really wanted an inside the scoop, off the beaten track, you go to a custom tour company, and they go to some of these on the radar, off the radar places. But you're going to pay $100 an hour, minimum of 6 hours, $600. The value that Cellar Angels has, you can bring a $600 day trip to them virtually free based upon your recommendations. It's already been vetted. It's you already tasted the wine. So it's kind of like going to, it's not $2 Chuck, but this is like $60 Chuck, and it's going to be the best wine ever. And you've already vetted it without having to go through this $100 an hour kind of stuff. So Cellar Angels is the real deal.
Well, thank you. I mean, please tell me we got that on tape.
Most of our members actually have been featured on Cellar Angels too. Most of our Save the Family Farms families are either on the Cellar Angels site now or have been in the past.
Yeah, it's not accidental that we love and gravitate towards the David v. Goliath stories. And we've been going to the Valley for a long, long, long time. I mean, fun fact, little contextual background. We were in so many wine clubs that Mission Control, AKA Denise, said, we've got a problem. We have too much wine coming to the house. And this was, you all can appreciate some of that, I know. Yes. So what did we do to solve the problem? We didn't cut back wine clubs. We opened up a wine store so we could buy the milk at 50% off and then have that. But then when 2008 and 2009 hit and the first global economic collapse, that was when it really hit home to us that these small producers were just getting absolutely decimated through no fault of their own. And I said, we've got a problem to solve here. How do we connect the small producer to a much larger audience, and audiences around the country that don't have the opportunity to travel to wine country can get exposed to wine? And oh, by the way, as a byproduct of this connection, let's throw off some proceeds to charity. And so it's working well. We get to meet amazing folks like Elise, Jim Brubaker, who's tagged along with us recently on a trip to wine country, and got to see firsthand the behind the scenes filming of everything that goes on for the videos that we do. And it is a lot of fun, and we've had a lot of fun doing it. But I think what George just said is very important, because the number of people that say things like, You guys get wine to me from producers I would never have heard of, never have found. And I don't want to sit 5 deep in a tasting room. I like the small producer. And we didn't invent this concept, right? I mean, no one goes on vacation and says, oh my God, I stayed at the best 1,000 room hotel. In this one restaurant sat 900 people. It's always the small producer that we like, whether it's a clothier, whether it's a timepiece manufacturer, whether it's a restaurant where the hostess is the wife and the chef is the husband, and they own this little beautiful place. That's the beauty of wine country that we want to introduce you to. And it's folks like Ken and Elise that just are unbelievable with their dedication, persistence, passion, romance, and loving the soil. And we're indebted for the opportunity to showcase them to you.
And we love when people come to Napa and visit us, because this is truly a labor of love, a small family business. If any of you have come from the small business or family business realm, and so we just love sharing our passion with people. And there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah. How does someone come and arrange a vineyard tour with you?
Reach out directly to us through our website. We have a phone number, email address, and just let us know that you know Denise and Martin from Cellar Angels. I mean, we love having friends out.
Good. It is a neat place. And by the way, the first poll question or second poll question with the comment about pinball flippers, when you go visit Elise, that will make more sense to you. It will really drive home the point. So I definitely would encourage people to hit the website, Elkhorn Peak, and make certain that you set up I almost said tasting, set up an appointment.
We don't do tastings, Martin.
You do not do tastings. We'll edit that out. It's not. It's only a live show now. When it goes to post-production, I'll be taller, less weight, and it'll be fine. All good. Jeff and Jane, greasy to everyone. At least they are going out there in early October. Hope to meet you then. So they will be out there. She'll be knee deep in a Cabernet harvest. So that
you want to come do some foot treading with me?
They would do that in a heartbeat.
Jeff and Jane, I'll probably be out there also.
Jane's already got her feet ready.
Right. All right, you all heard it. I have 3 volunteers for some foot treading in October. I'm going to hold you guys to that.
I love it. I love it. And George is going to write the tasting notes.
Yes.
So it's perfect. At least anything other than the Cabernet anxiety, what is exciting you most about the future of Elkhorn Peak?
Oh God, that's a deep question. I mean, I am hopeful.
It's a 2-hour show.
I'm really hopeful the micro winery ordinance passes in Napa sooner than later, and we can get our permit on the ranch and really just sort of open up for business. We're not going to get any larger, right? We're sort of bound by what we grow to determine our size, but it would just be really nice to be able to share what we do with people out in Napa and just sort of, continue the legacy of the small family farmer in Napa. That's what I'm excited about. Making more wine.
I think that's a good pursuit. And for those of you listening, there is a Save the Family Farm winery that is going to be the Q3 Wine Club producer. I'm not going to reveal the name just yet because that's coming in a private letter to everyone. But it is going to be announced soon. So hats off to, first of all, Doug Rutherford and Jim Brubaker for being the quick answers this week on the email blast with the trivia questions. They responded within minutes. And Doug, I loved your Pavlovian reference. So that was awesome. Very good stuff. But really want to thank all of you for helping us with this journey. And again, let's get the tent as big as we possibly can to help the small producer. And a wonderful nod to Elise and Ken at Elkhorn Peaks, because the wine is perhaps only surpassed by the people making it. And you two are fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing your production with us, your story with us, and certainly on a Friday evening, your time with us.
It was my pleasure, Martin. Thank you guys. Enjoy your Pét Nat.
I'm going to enjoy some more Pét Nat. Stay safe. Be good to one another.